If I was to tell you that there was a point in time for this game's history where Iron Fist was the single most feared creature the Lord had ever created, Lunar Snows could turn you into a Japanese Pokemon fan from 1997 just by ripping out the scroll wheel from their mouse, and Jeff was such an astronomically broken pick that you were actively considered throwing if you weren't running him, would you believe me? Welcome to Season 0 of Marvel Rivals, you bastard. A crazy, chaotic whale of a time complete with crashing, griefing, heated debates and friction burns. It was a party, and lads, you just kind of had to be there. It's a really alien concept to me that we've nearly been with Lunar's judgmental up and down glare for coming up on 2 years now, and I'm not entirely sure where the time has gone, but I know damn well that I want it back. I'd say over the past year of my life, I've probably spent more time with this game than my own family, but in my defense, Galactus never burst into my room mid-match to tell me that her opinion on slavery has changed, so yeah, I think I'm making the right choice. So, Marvel Rivals Season 0, one hell of a party. I'm still hungover, actually. I've been wanting to do a retrospective on Season 0 for a while now, partially because the Moon Knight video I'm making is just not quite coming together, but also because I'm a greying, shrinking, receding, angry old man who wants to enjoy the things he used to be a part of while he's still alive. I even managed to hook up my pacemaker to my sub count before this video began, so if you want me to make it to the 12-minute mark, then pass a brother the ball. My dear friends, let us gather around Lon'qudor as we embark on a journey to uncover the good, the bad, the ugly, and the ugly, hardcore, soft beginnings of this terribly disguised fan fiction of a game, or Marvel Rivals Season 0 as I think I called it earlier. Marvel Rivals is one of the few games I've ever played where the servers didn't immediately go on strike the second it was released to the general populace. This game had a better launch than the Challenger, bad example, but you get what I'm trying to say. These devs were more prepared than Noah for the flood of people coming into the community and the game, and everything went down really smoothly. First of all, the aforementioned servers actually existed. 2026, and that's still not a guarantee, by the way. In the first 24 hours alone, on Steam alone, we hit 444,000 players, and this number would only go up as the week went on. Now, I know that most of these people were able to get in-game, because I live in England, which is unfortunately attached to Europe, a continent which holds 9% of the world's population and only has 2 Marvel Rivals servers, so believe me when I say, if I could get on, then you probably could as well. Actually, player counts were very even for the rest of the month, with a couple dips, not too sure what was going on there, but the game wasn't actually updated on those days, so I guess people got asleep or something.
Why'd they go and do that?
It's a really big shame I don't have the launch day stats for PS5, because unfortunately, Sony would rather I become a Nintendo YouTuber than give me any consistent access to statistics of what people are playing on PS5. They hate PC players that much. And when I say Nintendo YouTuber, I mean like one of the ones with the voice. You know the voice, you know when they're like, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Super Mario Sunshine, you know, one of them. Let's see what else happened day one. Twitch viewership was good. Official Rivals Discord and subreddit, that's nice. And, oh yeah, the former president of Blizzard crashed out on the big tweet. Mr. Mike Fake Last Name was the president of Blizzard from 2021 to, I think, only 2022. And he was not a happy camper learning that Rivals had decided to add a spider-themed sniper to their game. Ooh. This is, you know, completely ignoring the fact that Black Widow as a character had existed for more than 50 years before Widowmaker's waxy ponytail ever found its way onto the hub. He got ratioed, he got community noted, and he eventually deleted his tweet, but not before Guang was able to print it off and roll it up and smoke it. First Impressions is a bit like Launch Day, but more or less from the community side of things. We're still talking about Season 0 here, but since this season is intrinsically linked with the actual launch of the game, there is going to be quite a bit of overlap. So, what did the people think about Season 0 and subsequently the game on launch? Well, it sort of depends on who you ask. If you were to ask an Overwatch fan, they'd tell you it was a refreshingly new experience, complete with awesome character designs, amazing game mechanics, and a devilishly good art style. But on the other hand, if you were to ask an Overwatch fan, they tell you it was a cheap Chinese knockoff filled with Goonabait characters, stolen game mechanics, and a horrifically objectifying art style. So, as you can see, we have a wide pool of opinions to comb over. But, okay, why don't we start with the pre-existing Marvel Rivals fan, the one who played the beta. What did he think of Season 0? Well, for a further bit of context, the beta for this game only had 23 characters, with Adam Warlock and Venom being brand newcomers from the alpha, and then Thor and Jeff were added to the beta at a later date. Now, you might have noticed that 23 is not 30. 33, as in the number of heroes we had on launch. Yes, a whopping 10 heroes were added to Season 0 that had not existed in any build of this game prior. These heroes are Captain America, Winter Soldier, Psylocke, Moon Knight, Hawkeye, Squirrel, Iron Fist, Black Widow, Cloak and Dagger, and Wolverine to name but all of them. We knew they were all coming. They all had their own individual or shared trailers leading up to the game's launch. So, all of this to say, if you were a pre-existing Rivals fan going into Season 0, then you were eating like a king. The roster alone was enough to bring in fans from all over the Marvel continuity. It was stacked beyond belief, which really was the game's unique selling point. You want to play as Spider-Man in a hero shooter, or maybe Groot, or Captain America, or whoever the hell this is supposed to be? Guess what, you can't do any of those things. The Rivals fan is a Rivals fan, set and done. So what did Mr. FPS fan think of this game? Well, after going back and reading lots of Steam reviews, Reddit conversations, and generally remembering what people were saying at the time, I think his opinion was something along the lines of, wow, this is great, but it's going to take a hell of a lot of getting used to. I generally try to avoid engaging with the communities around the games I play, not out of any sort of moral superiority, but just because this rock I'm living under is amazing. Like, if you had asked me to engage in a Reddit conversation about this game day one, I probably would have given you a list of 40 colours of paint I'd rather watch dry. That being said though, I did want to make content on this game, so I kept half of someone else's eye on what people were saying, and that's the general impression we picked up. Comparing this game to any other hero shooter on the market is a bit like a German paratrooper landing in Buckinghamshire in 1943. He might look like the Bucks, and depending on how hard he hit the floor, he might walk like the Bucks, but he doesn't at all speak the same language. Nope, too British for the Yankees? Let me think. It's a bit like a gator being in your swamp instead of a crocodile. It might look the same. No, they don't look the same. In fact, paratroopers didn't even land in England. This is the second worst analogy in this video. This is sort of similar to the general opinion I've heard of Deadlock, as all of my mates who are obsessed with Deadlock to the point of it being their entire personality tell me that they utterly hated it right up until the 100th hour, and I've always just viewed that as an objectively bad game, but I don't know. I knew I was gonna like Rivals before it had even come out, so I guess I'm in my own camp here. No, I don't just play this game religiously. I do other things. Yesterday I welded my neighbour's door shut using only a ciggy. What have you done this week? As an attention deficit, crying, streaming, triple screening, chud little baby, I constantly need new content to be added to the games I play, or else I'm gonna scream about how dead they are on the big tweet. New stuff. What was the new stuff added to this game from the beta? Well, I guess the main thing to discuss would be the new characters in greater depth, because having 10 new toys to play with in a box of 33 is genuinely insane. The characters of this game really are the unique selling point at a surface level. This game collects heroes and villains like Bonnie Blue collects STDs for her Infinity Gatlet, and one day she shall snap her fingers and erase half of all chuds in existence. Further helping with the addition of these new goons is just how different their playstyles were from everyone else, with the exceptions of Hawkeye and Widow for being pretty standard pokers and C&D for being about as exciting as CPR. Every single new character they added is playing a completely different game from the last, and characters like Moon Knight, Psylocke and Bucky are standout examples for going on to define their own metas in future, the most unique of which has to be Wolverine. Wolverine plays this insane game of smoking ciggies and grabbing biggies, and is a perfect representation of what a Five Nights at Freddy's hero shooter could potentially look like. I absolutely love Wolverine, and I'm infatuated with the way he plays. Just kidding, I've never played him in my entire life. Cap's visual design also caused a bit of a chin wag on release, because, it sucks. He unironically looks like that one comic book art of him. You know the one. You've seen the video essay. It's been in your recommended. His armor is short in the long places, it's long in the short places. His torso is so wide it looks like he swallowed a bathtub and is desperately hoping no one notices. And his jaw has so much muscle behind it, he looks like he could eat an apple through a fence. Nothing about this design works. I'm really not a fan of it at all. Oh yeah, and I guess Season 0 added my main. With the design so hard, I had to go and iron my shirt during production of this video just so I wouldn't be creasing his name. I flipping love Moon Knight. Apart from the characters, maps were a pretty big feature of Season 0. There were only 4 maps in the beta, both of the Yggdrasil ones and both of the Tokyo 2099 ones. Season 0 added an extra 4 maps to the pool, those being the Wakanda ones, the Hydra base, and the Clintar payload map. Remembering a time before all-timers like the Wakanda payload map were added to the game just feels really weird to me, as some of my favourite memories of Season 0 involve picking Moon Knight, loading into that map and just shooting anything that was a different colour to me. And I'm not too sure if that sentence comes from my inner racism or from the 3,000 hours I put into the shirt-themed war simulator. As for a grab bag of other things that don't really merit a larger mention, a bunch of new currencies replaced the 2 old ones, whatever. Several UI parts were changed, more heroes meant more team-ups, and more things to do meant more opportunities for Galacta to tell you to go to sleep. But the final thing worth covering here is the new Battle Pass, which is entirely centered around the idea of this being a half season. Season 0 was the grease that would go on to spin the wheels of the Rivals machine, and was only ever intended to contain half the content and half the runtime of a normal season. It was an appetizer for the meal to come, so to say. So things like the Battle Pass only contained half as much content and costed as, well, you figure it out. This thing was really small, a lot smaller than I remember it being at the time. It only had 5 skins, which is a total of 1 more than I have, and only had 5 tiers, including the final comic page as well. These skins are all pretty damn nice, maybe some of the best we've ever seen in a Battle Pass so far, but they don't really have a place in the theme of anything that would come later, so I think they're fine here. But let's just ignore all of them, because as someone who has been known to, as the kids say, whip this hoe, my drive to immediately get to the top tier and bag this incredibly cool Mantis skin was asinine. I sped around this thing so fast that Guang Guang almost pulled me over for speeding. I love this skin so much. Awesome design. We also had this new Battle Pass system that allowed you to buy things in the tier individually, but only getting the skin at the end once you brought all of the other stuff. This is a big improvement from the Battle Pass in the beta, which was very much just a placeholder and was entirely consistent of shop skins. So it's nice to be able to buy the emote first and then just save everything else until you have the money to buy the rest of the tier, which is just what I assume everyone else does as well. Day by day, nothing changes, but when you look back, you realise that our version of September 1st, 1939 was when they buffed Prime Torch into existence. I think discussing character balance alone is a worthy enough conversation to take up an entire category in this video. I've probably got more here to say than anywhere else, but I'm going to try and keep my thoughts concise, and we're not going to be covering every character and how they were received, just the ones noteworthy of example. Speaking of though, there is one character we have to discuss first. A character that almost killed this game before it even released, and no, I am not joking. You see, there have been very few times in my life where I've truly had the fear of God put into me. The only 2 times that come to mind pre-setup were when I once ran face first into a thorny bush as a child whilst trying to escape a Rottweiler, and another time when I did exactly that, but it wasn't a bush and it was a 40-year-old man. So believe me, dear viewer, believe me when I tell you that pre-launch Black Widow almost killed every single prospect this game could have had. December 3rd, 2024. 3 flipping days before the game is set to launch, the Black Widow trailer is uploaded to the Rivals YouTube channel, and in it, it's revealed that she can one-shot headshot any character below 300 HP. Safe to say, not even the White House was prepared to survive a nuclear fallout like this. Scrolling through the comments on this video is both hilarious and nostalgic to me, as every single one of them was written by someone actively seeking shelter for what was to come a few days later. But then, the game launched, and nothing happened, because they changed it. They stripped Widow off her rifle and replaced it with a 6-pack of cold and flu tablets, and to this day they have still never given it back to her. Good bloody riddance. Now for a few standout examples of characters who were actually good in, the version of the game we got. I remember Hawkeye and Hela being a very dominant pairing together. Hela, of course, being the character that nobody likes, yet everyone wanted to play, and Hawkeye being the character that nobody likes and nobody wanted to play. The headshot from Narnia comp was the winning hand on launch, as in a playing field where nobody knows what they're doing, it's a lot more advantageous to not know what you're doing 20 meters over there, and these two had the best combinations of power and range on the roster. They weren't broken, I hesitate to call them that, but they were certainly oppressive. Oppressive to the point to where if they had let Edward Scissorhands into the studio to do some rebalancing, I think the community would have actively welcomed the end result. But okay, what if we took the opposite approach to this? Instead of flailing our arms 20 meters away from everyone else, what would it look like if we flailed them directly in their faces? This is where Captain China comes into the mix, because my goodness were people bitching about Iron Fist on launch. His combined strengths of having more jumps than a backstreet in London and his ability to hold the ball better than Prime LeBron meant that Iron Fist was one hell of an oppressive force throughout the entire season. No one had ever seen anything like this in a hero shooter before. He's a melee character, but he's flying through the air at a speed so fast it would make Sonic want to kill himself. But in a way, that's also what killed Iron Fist. No one had ever seen anything like this before. There was no counterplay. Once people learnt not to shoot the counter and prioritize attacking him over running away, he just sort of dropped from the tier lists overnight. It seems so simple to us these days, but you really have to remember that 2024 was a different time, and that general community knowledge maybe took about 2 months to develop. It's a canon event for anyone who plays flyers in this game to be escaping the point only to be chased down by Little Mac with a jetpack glued to his back. But these days anyway, at least you know you can shoot him in the head and he'll stay dead. As for the healers, I honestly remember Cloak and Dagger's ult more than I remember Cloak and Dagger. This thing was more omnipresent than Jesus. You couldn't walk 4 meters in Season 0 without a mixed race couple on either team locking hands and farting all over your shoes. Really annoying. I'm so thankful this thing has just been nerfed over and over again. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Another healer is Luna. But I don't want to talk about her because she's an industry plant. So instead, I think it's just time to talk about Jeffrey. Where do I even begin with him? How do you make a character this incredibly useless, yet so impossibly difficult to fight against, to the point where he hard pivots back to being insanely useful? How does that even happen? You couldn't do that if you tried. It's important to note here that we're talking about pre-rework Jeff, something that many of you don't even know ever existed. Jeffrey was designed from the beginning to be a general supportist with some interesting capabilities to him. His bubbles and ultimate could save teammates when they were in a pinch. He was able to keep foes at bay with his rapid fire attacks, and his beam, whilst not doing the most healing, could target multiple people at once. The problem in all of this is that he sucked at all of these tasks. He didn't defend his team, he didn't provide offense, and he didn't have the healing to help his team out. But the most important thing he didn't do was die. He did not die. Do you understand me? Do you see what I'm trying to say? You could not kill him. It was not possible. Turns out being able to store more bubbles than in the entirety of Bikini Bottom in your cheeks, combined with his getaway submarine ability, meant that you just could not kill him. So it really didn't matter how bad his healing was. As long as he was healing and he was not dying, he was an asset to the team. I'm happy this Jeffrey is dead. He's in a better place now. But then again, pro players still express an issue with current Jeffrey, so I don't know, eagle eats my liver, liver goes back. As for the rest of the cast, there isn't one particular character I'd like to dedicate an entire segment to. Things like Doctor Strange's portal and Spider-Man's amazing combo are pretty self-explanatory and people got used to them quite quickly. So instead, I think I'd like to dedicate the rest of this section to Season 0 team-ups, because what on earth were these devs on? Do you like the idea of the Punisher and Bucky getting access to infinite ammo for a set period of time? Or Mag being able to hurl the entirety of Africa at you every time he opens his palms? Or Spider-Man being able to perform a true insta-kill combo to any medium health character? Or what about Iron Man, except he's green this time? Yeah, these things are insane. I'm happy they're never returning. Actually, no, there is another thing I'd like to cap out this section with. I found this tier list on Reddit by Mr. Aggravating Job Too Many Numbers, which he created by analysing the statistics of pro players at the time. He did a pretty damn good job on his research, so I'm fairly confident in calling this a definitive tier list for Season 0. So there you go, I just thought that was a bit of interesting history to cover. You know, I used to once know this girl Eloise back in college. She was really into horses and would go riding every Saturday and often post pictures of it on the gram. One day though, she posted a picture of herself looking really sweaty and tired, yet still smiling and giving a thumbs up next to her horse. And somehow this image made its way throughout the entire college and everyone just spent the rest of the year calling her Mrs. Hands. No, this isn't relevant to what we're talking about. Never let it be said that I would ever go full Nintendo YouTuber on this game and start defending every single major flaw and anti-consumer practice it pushes, because it ain't perfect. I know I've been glazing Season 0 like a plasterer's radio, but it had its fair share of issues, and I'm gonna be honest, some of them were incredibly funny. I'm going to split this section in twain between actual in-game issues and general issues that the community had with the game. Again, I'm not going to be covering everything. I'm just going to be picking out a few major examples that would make for an interesting 5 to 8 minute discussion. Starting with the actual in-game issues though, we have to talk about the big one. Whilst developing this game, it really didn't seem like the devs thought people with lower end PCs would even attempt to play it, as somehow your attacks and movement abilities were directly tied to your FPS. This means that if you were consistently dropping below 60 FPS, your movement abilities wouldn't send you as far, your attack rate would be slower, and your attacks would just overall deal less damage. How does one even begin going about conceptualizing a mistake like this? You could probably show the code of this game to a 25-year industry veteran and he'd give you the same look a Blender Bro gives you when you accidentally create life because you wanted to delete a keyframe. I want to say this was probably spotted around the final week of December and was patched pretty quickly, but if anyone here knows game design better than I do, could you tell me how easy this is to replicate? Or whether this is just a common thing? I'd really like to know. You know what, whilst we're talking about how this game runs, why don't we just extend this conversation onto optimization? This game has the running capacity of a starving hamster. It is genuinely shocking to me just how unoptimized it still is to this day, well over a year later. And Season 0 would lay out this future to us with the finest of penmanship. When Rivals launched, it was about 70 gigabytes, which, okay, fine, doesn't seem that bad in comparison. Elden Ring is 66, by the way. Elden Ring is 66, by the way, and ever since then we've been slowly ticking up that number to the inevitable point where not even the computers at NASA have enough storage to run this game. The highest I ever saw the file space get was about 120, and ever since then the devs have done a decent job at trying to keep it as low as they can by removing unnecessary stuff with every major update. But like, 113 is still quite big. It doesn't bode well for the future. Also tagging along with the optimization conversation is just that the game doesn't really run super well, if I'm honest. There are so many settings you can play with to try and get it to be the best you can, but it just needs a good computer at the end of the day. How the devs were able to get this game running on PS4 is genuinely beyond me. I don't think Moses has ever pulled off miracles that big. Poor optimization really did drag a lot of people away from the game at the time, as crashes were also a pretty staple feature of Season 0. Looking at you, Doctor Strange Portal. My game still crashes every now and then, but at least it doesn't blue screen my computer anymore like it used to, so that's nice. But the overall point I'm trying to make is that many of these issues are still with us today. Looking at you, Doctor Strange Portal. Aside from Doctor Strange's Portal, I'm only going to talk about two other characters in this section when it comes to bugs, because I think they are by far the best examples of what Season 0 bugs looked like. So how's about that Luna ult, huh? This is less of a bug and more of a developer oversight, but Luna players noticed pretty early on that if you could uncap the scroll rate on your scroll wheel, Luna could send everyone in a 20-meter radius on an all-expenses-paid trip to the seizure ward, as this thing was bright and bright. It was really painful to look at in-game. And the funny thing is, it was actually optimal to use, as you could get both the damage boost and the healing pretty consistently by doing this. These days you can only swap between the damage and the healing at a fixed rate, but something about silly bugs like this just really make me miss Season 0. The only other character I really want to mention here is Black Panther, as on launch his spear throws registered so inconsistently to the point where the way the devs wanted you to play the character was just not possible. 3 entire months would go by before this was fixed, by the way. 3 months. And when it did, it immediately shot Black Panther up into his prime, and we've never quite seen anything like it in Rivals again. So if you're someone who suddenly remembers a huge resurgence in Black Panther mains a while ago only for them to all die out, this was why. So that's it for the main in-game issues, but what were some of the issues the community had with this game on launch? Well, for starters, anyone could take a look at this roster and see that not all of these characters were going to be balanced, and this game was probably going to have a larger emphasis on new characters rather than improving old ones. And unfortunately, that still seems to be the case to this day. I'm not about to tell you that every main problem this game currently has today was spelled out for us in Season 0, because I said that earlier, but it is an objective fact that this incessant need to add new characters every 2 minutes to the game is going to hurt it in the long run. I would take an entire season where we got no new characters, all of the bad ones got some real attention given to them, and like 2 new maps, but if we did that, then this game would die. How are we supposed to make money if we don't add a new hit scan scrimblo bimblo for the streamers to cry about? It can't be done. It's not profitable. We need new characters and we need them now. At the very beginning of the game, I understand this approach, as you're entering a competitive market and you need your UPI. But my brother in Christ, we've been doing this for like a year and a half. Let's just slow down a bit. On the topic of being slow though, if there was a character that was overpowered day 1 of Season 0, they were overpowered on day 30, as at the very beginning the devs were very, very slow to actually make balance adjustments. It seems logical to dedicate an entire section of this video just to the balance adjustments, but there really weren't very many of them, and they weren't very impactful either. I understand the mentality of this, not wanting to stir the water too much, but like, there were problems, and they weren't fixed for a very long time. 30 days is a long time. That's like 7 years in dog time, I think. Yeah, dogs don't live very long in England. Another very interesting issue the community have with the game is sort of more related to hero shooters as a whole, but it comes back to the whole question of how long is this game going to last? Rivals released at a time where all new hero shooters were just botched copy-paste jobs of Overwatch, and they were all trying to eat the same lunch. So people actively avoided this game because they thought it was going to be crap, and they thought it was just going to be dead in a few weeks like everything else. And I am labeling this a problem of the game, because I do think better marketing probably could have undercut this. The marketing for this game was fine. It was all about choosing your favorite Marvel heroes and just beating each other up until the sun rises, but I really don't think they tried to squash the rumors of this being another hero shooter. I have no intention of yelling at you for having a competent sense of pattern recognition. Anyone could have looked at this roster day 1 and said, okay, half of these characters are never going to get nerfed, and the other half are going to get power crept into stupidity. The writing was on the stall. That's essentially essentially what this entire section sums up to. It really is funny to me that the palm readings for Season 0 would predict everything that this game would have to come. Hella fun, hella problems. Okay, alright then. Acceptable. I have managed to go this far in this video without having a proper discussion about another game, which this one is conceptually quite similar to, and if that's not worthy of a subscribe, I really don't know what is. I truly apologize to you for the chapter that's coming up, because I really don't think there is any sense in comparing these two games. Nobody gets anything out of it, and the entire argument is centered around the idea that no one is ever allowed to take any inspiration from anyone, and there can only ever be one true hero shooter on the market. Utter bollocks. However, with this conversation, and specifically in the context of Rivals' launch, we do need to bring up Overwatch is not Marvel Rivals, and Marvel Rivals is not trying to be Overwatch anymore. As in, the version of the game we got was not trying to be Overwatch. Let me explain. There are two conversations to be had about Overwatch in the context of Rivals. The first one is about the game's pipeline from conception to end product, and the other one is about the Overwatch community's reaction to having some genuine competition. Starting with that first one, there's no denying it. This game, at one point in time, was trying to be Overwatch. I think a refusal to accept this is exactly what lobotomy campaignists are looking for in patience. That version of the game was born right at the moment where the NetEase higher-ups realized just how profitable Overwatch was and just how hard Blizzard were pandering to the Chinese, and realized that they could probably play better on their home turf than anyone else could, and also could secure the funding to make the same game but with a much larger IP. This Overwatch clone, however, died the moment that Guang pulled these NetEase's devs out of 2018 Jeff Kaplan's arse and showed them what kind of a game they could be making, and that's the version of the game we ended up getting. This game was born as Overwatch, but it was developed as Marvel Rivals. I think the beta is pretty good proof of everything I've been talking about, because it really does feel like it wants to be Overwatch, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe the menus are a big contributing factor to this. That sort of distant techno feeling really isn't something I saw a lot of before Overwatch, and even when you played the game, it really felt like it wanted to be Overwatch, which is why I want to defend Season 0, because the difference between the beta and then is basically night and day. These days, the only two things the games share are an argumentative community and a driveway. Once again, another reference the Americans aren't going to get, but all you need to know is that that is elite ball tier knowledge. If you still want to say that Season 0 is an Overwatch clone, then I'm really not going to fight you on it because I can see your point, but as someone who's played Overwatch 1, the beta for Rivals, and Rivals Season 0, I just don't feel it anymore. I've never played Overwatch 2, by the way, so, you know, maybe there's that. Something I really wasn't expecting, though, is that Rivals had unintentionally exposed just how lazy Blizzard had been with content for Overwatch, purely because they had a monopoly on the hero shooter genre. They didn't need to actually do anything with their game, people were going to play it anyway. When someone finally comes along and puts some food in your mouth, you realize just how damn hungry you've been and for how long, and trust me, as a TF2 player, I went from thin to fat within minutes of installing Rivals. Again, this was ultimately proven true, as Blizzard's response to this would be Season 1 of Overwatch, in which they completely rebranded what Overwatch 2 was, and gave the players the content they'd been holding back from them for years. And genuinely, I couldn't be happier for Overwatch players. It is objectively good to have competition in your life. There is another conversation we could have about Rivals versus Overwatch, specifically when it comes to the character designs, as a lot of Overwatch fans were offended that these designs are good, but that's not really the main focal point of this conversation. Those people really were the minority, and they also seem to have forgotten that Overwatch was a game built upon spandex from the very beginning. They only changed their modus operandi because they thought it would be more profitable, and the fact that they've done a good job at doing it is proof that they only care about your money. The point I'm trying to make in all of this is that these two games are completely different, and they just so happen to share an audience. That doesn't make them clones of each other. Rivals is a clone of Overwatch in the same way that Overwatch is a clone of TF2, put it that way. Both of these games existing has made the other one better. It's healthy competition, and we as, I was going to say gamers, but that feels like a very 2018 word. We as gamers have more options for what we play, and we really shouldn't be complaining about that. I'm just tired of this argument. I see where it came from, but it's just not valid today, which is why I brought it up, because it just needs to be laughed at. We'll just need to move on with our lives. I like this one. If you like the other one, you go for it. Initially, I wanted this section of the video to be me going over a bunch of Steam reviews for Season 0, but after actually looking at them, I realized it was completely pointless, as all of the positive ones were just from Overwatch fans wanting this to be different, and all of the negative ones were from Overwatch fans wanting this to be the same, so there's not really too much merit in it. So instead, we'll wind down this video by talking about the future that Season 0 had laid out for the game, how long people thought it was going to last, what would the honeymoon phase window be, and overall, was it worth sticking around? These days, being able to play play a game without a little bitch in your ear telling you that everything is falling apart is not a right, it's a privilege. And as a game entering into a highly monopolized yet competitive genre, the second biggest conversation around Rivals was the one of how long it's going to last. People generally agree that this game would go into one of two directions. It would either be dead after 3 months or it would be dead after 2 years. Most of this discussion was happening before the season had even come out, and people really thought this game was just going to be Overwatch 2. China Edition. As for why these periods of time specifically, not really sure, but they are quite specific. The general prediction was that this game's gameplay was going to be less flavourable than a warm column of pissy air, but still might have enough of a scent to carry it over the 2-year mark. And as someone who's currently living in the future, I'd say we've probably got well more than 2 years ahead of us. 33 unique ways to kill anyone who pisses you off, and a roster of major IP that reads like the world's best bar joke will only carry you so far, because if the gameplay loop isn't there, then the gameplay loop isn't there. And whilst things definitely feel a lot slower and more stale than they used to, there very much is still some enjoyment to be had in this routine. Honeymoon phase is a buzzword phrase that was also thrown about a lot at this time, and in this context, a honeymoon phase basically refers to how long will people go before they stop glazing this thing because it's brand new and the reality of what we have actually settles in. And lad, we left the honeymoon phase a long time ago, but I still see people throwing it about, but purely as an insult. As an insult to say that you're dumb for liking this and what we have is actually terrible, which just isn't true. There was just a lot happening with the first 30 days of this game. A lot of optimisms, a lot of fears, and I think all of them were incredibly valid. And attempting to sum up the thoughts of over 20 million players in a half-an-hour video was never going to be an easy achievement. I didn't even have time to talk about things like the first 30 days of competitive or what content creators arose around the time. In the end though, this video was a celebration of the beginnings of this incredible game. So thank you, Season 0, for not only being the launchpad to one of the best games I've ever played in my life, but also for granting me a sense of financial independence and personal growth, because my channel would be half as big as it is right now if it weren't for Rivals, and I'd probably be making videos like which TF2 YouTubers are virgins just to put money in my pockets. I'm happy I was there day one. It was one hell of a party, and I'm sort of annoyed that this menu music has started to send nostalgic shivers down my spine. It hasn't even been 2 years yet. Wow, I just love Lon'qudor videos, don't you? There's something about B-tier editing combined with the scathing comedic commentary of a man whose dreams didn't quite work out for him in life that really makes for a fantastic audio-visual viewing experience. If I've learned anything from making this video, it's that Overwatch fans really like Overwatch, Rivals fans really like Rivals, and knitting fans don't really have a stake in the conversation one way or the other. So until the day comes when Prime Cyclops mysteriously zips himself up into a suitcase and is never heard from again, my name has been Lon'qudor. I would die for Riley, and my ability to write funny innuendos is 8.5 inches long and curves slightly upwards. Hi, just popping in here at the end to say that I am potentially looking for an editor to help me edit my Blender shorts. So if you're familiar with Premiere Pro and my content, hit me up on Discord. Okay, right, bye, I love you.